Humans have walked on the moon. We have mapped the ocean floor, decoded the human genome, built machines that can predict the weather, peer into the earliest moments of the universe, and communicate with anyone on Earth in an instant. By almost any measure, we are the most knowledgeable species that has ever existed on this planet. And yet, there are questions that remain stubbornly, fascinatingly unanswered. Some of them are ancient, left behind by civilizations that built things we still cannot fully explain, wrote things we still cannot read, created things that should not have been possible given what we believe about their time. Some are more recent mysteries that popular imagination has transformed into legend. And some of the deepest mysteries are not ancient at all. They are discoveries made by modern science that have opened questions so large and so strange that the answers may require an entirely new understanding of reality itself. This is not a video about conspiracy theories or supernatural explanations. It is a video about genuine, unresolved questions that serious archaeologists, historians, physicists, and researchers are still actively working on. Questions that the best minds in the world have not yet been able to fully answer. The mysteries are real, the uncertainty is genuine, and the stories behind them are some of the most interesting in the entire history of human knowledge. Subscribe to Freud Mind and let us begin. On the western bank of the Nile, on the edge of the desert plateau of Gaza, stand three structures that have been the subject of more investigation, more debate, and more wonder than almost anything else ever built by human hands. The Great Pyramids of Egypt are not mysterious in the way that ghost stories are mysterious. We know who built them. We have the names of the pharaohs, Khufu, Khafre, Menkaure, for whom the three major pyramids were constructed during the Old Kingdom period, roughly 4,500 years ago. We have found workers' villages, administrative records, graffiti left by construction crews who named their teams with the same pride that modern construction workers might. The builders were skilled laborers, organized, paid, fed, not slaves, as the old mythology suggested. The humans behind the pyramids are not the mystery. The mystery is how. The Great Pyramid of Khufu, the largest, was constructed from approximately 2.3 million stone blocks, each weighing between 2 and 15 tons, with some blocks in the internal chambers weighing up to 80 tons. The structure covers an area of about 53,000 square meters and was, for nearly 4,000 years, the tallest structure on Earth. It is aligned with the cardinal directions, north, south, east, west, with a precision of less than 0.05 degrees of error. In an era before GPS, before laser measurement, before the instruments that make modern surveying possible, this alignment is almost incomprehensibly accurate. The internal structure adds further layers of astonishment. The king's chamber, deep within the pyramid, is constructed from massive granite blocks brought from Aswan, more than 800 kilometers away. The chamber's walls, ceiling, and floor are fitted with a precision that produces almost seamless joins. Above the chamber, a series of stress-relieving chambers distribute the enormous weight of the structure above, an engineering solution that requires not just skill, but a sophisticated understanding of structural mechanics. The theories for how this was accomplished are numerous and have been tested, modeled, and debated by engineers and archaeologists for decades. Ramps are the most commonly discussed mechanism, but the specific type of ramp that could have served the construction without being larger than the pyramid itself remains debated. Water lubrication of sledges, used to slide blocks across sand, has been demonstrated to work at small scale and seems likely to have played a role. The organization of labor at the scale required coordinating tens of thousands of workers in a sustained, decades-long construction effort, represents a feat of administration and management that would be impressive even by modern standards. In 2017, a muon tomography scan, using cosmic particles to create a kind of X-ray image of the pyramid's interior, revealed what appeared to be a large void above the Grand Gallery, a previously unknown space inside the pyramid. What it is, whether it is a structural feature or an undiscovered chamber, and what it might contain, remains under investigation. The pyramids are still revealing things. On a windswept plain in southern England, arranged in a pattern that has puzzled investigators for centuries, stand the stones of Stonehenge. The structure we see today is the final phase of a monument that was built, rebuilt, and modified over a period of approximately 1,500 years, from around 3000 BCE to around 1500 BCE, meaning that the monument was already old when the Egyptian pyramids were new. The most immediately striking fact about Stonehenge is not the size of the stones, though they are considerable, the largest weighing around 25 tons, but where some of them came from. The blue stones, a set of smaller but still substantial stones at the inner portion of the monument, were quarried in the Preseli Hills of Wales, approximately 320 kilometers away. How a Neolithic society, without the wheel, without metal tools, without draft animals capable of pulling such weights, transported these stones across that distance over terrain that includes rivers and hills, is one of the most practical engineering mysteries of the ancient world. Extensive research has identified the probable quarry sites in Wales, and experimental archaeology has demonstrated that large groups of people could move such stones using sledges, rollers, and rafts along coastal routes. The technical possibility has been established. The organizational and motivational reality, what would drive a society to commit to an undertaking of this scale over generations, is less clearly understood. Stonehenge's purpose is perhaps its deepest mystery. The monument aligns with the sunrise on the summer solstice and the sunset on the winter solstice, making it almost certainly a structure whose relationship to solar astronomy was intentional. But whether it was primarily an observatory, a ceremonial site, a place of ancestor veneration, a healing center, there is evidence that points toward healing in the form of skeletal remains, showing people had traveled from distant regions, or some combination of all of these purposes, remains genuinely debated. Archaeological excavations continue to reveal new details about the site and its surrounding landscape, and every new finding seems to add complexity rather than provide simple answers. On the dry, high plateau of southern Peru in the Nazca Desert, there are drawings that can only be fully appreciated from the air. The Nazca Lines, created by removing the dark, reddish-brown iron oxide-coated surface stones of the desert to reveal the yellowish-white ground beneath, were made approximately 2,000 years ago by the Nazca civilization. The individual geoglyphs range from simple geometric lines and spirals to figures of extraordinary specificity. A hummingbird with wingspan measured in hundreds of feet, a spider, a monkey with a curling tail, a condor, a tree, a flower, humanoid figures. The largest lines extend for several kilometers. The geometric precision of the drawings, maintained over enormous distances, was achieved without aerial perspective, without surveyors' instruments as we know them, using a system of stakes and cords that researchers have successfully reverse-engineered. The technical how is reasonably understood. The why is the genuine mystery. Why invest the resources and organization required to create drawings of this scale and precision if they can only be fully perceived from an elevation that the Nazca civilization could not reach? Theories have included astronomical purposes. Some lines do align with solar and stellar events, ceremonial routes meant to be walked rather than viewed, connections to water sources in an extremely arid landscape where water was precious and ritually significant, and territorial or cultural markers. No single explanation has achieved consensus, partly because the site contains multiple types of features that may have served different purposes at different times. The remarkable preservation of the Nazca Lines comes from the extreme dryness of the desert and the stability of the climate, conditions that have kept the geoglyphs intact for 2 millennia. Modern threats include tourism and the encroachment of human activity, making their preservation now as active a concern as their interpretation. In the middle of the South Pacific, 3,700 kilometers from the coast of Chile, lies a small volcanic island that is one of the most isolated inhabited places on Earth. Easter Island, known to its indigenous Polynesian inhabitants as Rapa Nui, contains approximately 900 giant stone statues called moai, carved from the soft volcanic rock of the island's interior and placed, in most cases, on ceremonial stone platforms facing inland with their backs to the sea. The moai are larger than most people imagine before seeing them. The average standing moai is around 4 meters tall and weighs around 14 tons. The largest ever erected stands around 10 meters. The largest ever carved, which was never moved from the quarry, would have been over 20 meters tall. They were carved using stone tools in a quarry in the crater of an extinct volcano called Rano Raraku, where hundreds of unfinished statues remain in various stages of completion, some still attached to the rock, as if the carvers simply stopped mid-work and never returned. The question of how the moai were transported across the island, some for distances of up to 18 kilometers over uneven terrain, has been investigated extensively. Experimental archaeology has demonstrated that a walking method, using ropes and a coordinated rocking motion, could have allowed the statues to be moved upright, which may be the source of oral traditions describing the statues as having walked to their locations. Sledge and rope systems are another credible approach. The exact method and how the statues were raised onto their platforms remains debated. What is perhaps more poignant than the engineering mystery is the cultural one. Many of the moai were later deliberately toppled by the islanders themselves or their descendants in a period of internal conflict and social breakdown that occurred centuries after the statues were erected. The circumstances of that collapse, what caused it, what role resource depletion may have played, what the moai meant to the people who built and then overturned them, are questions that sit at the intersection of archaeology, ecology, and the history of human societies under stress. If the pyramids and Stonehenge seem ancient, the site of Göbekli Tepe in southeastern Turkey requires a fundamental adjustment of historical assumptions. Discovered in the 1990s by German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt, Göbekli Tepe contains massive carved stone pillars arranged in circular enclosures, with detailed relief carvings of animals, foxes, snakes, wild boar, birds, scorpions, that are sophisticated by any standard. The site dates to approximately 11,000 years ago. What makes this genuinely astonishing is the context. 11,000 years ago, humans were hunter-gatherers. Agriculture had not yet been developed. The settled, organized societies that we typically associate with monumental construction did not yet exist. Every assumption that archaeologists had made about the sequence of human development was challenged by a site that produced enormous, precisely carved ceremonial architecture before any of that development had taken place. The T-shaped pillars, some standing up to 6 meters tall and weighing up to 10 tons, were quarried from nearby limestone plateaus using flint tools. The organization required to construct the site, to gather the labor force, to feed them, to coordinate the quarrying and carving and erection of stones at this scale, implies a level of social complexity and cooperative organization that was previously thought to come only after agriculture, not before it. One theory is that the need to gather for the construction of sites like Göbekli Tepe may itself have been a factor that drove the development of agriculture. The need to feed large groups of people in one place for extended periods, creating an incentive for food production that had not previously existed. If so, the site does not just predate civilization, it may have helped create it. And then, around 8,000 years ago, Göbekli Tepe was intentionally buried. The enclosures were filled in with rubble and dirt. Why an ancient society would go to the effort of burying a site this significant is one of the most intriguing questions in archaeology. In the Beinecke Rare Book and Manuscript Library at Yale University, there is a book that has defeated every expert who has ever tried to read it. The Voynich Manuscript, named after the Polish book dealer Wilfrid Voynich, who acquired it in 1912, is a handwritten, illustrated book of approximately 240 pages, produced on vellum, and carbon-dated to the early 15th century. It contains detailed illustrations of plants that do not match any known species, star charts, diagrams of what appear to be astronomical or cosmological systems, bathing women in interconnected pools, and pages of text written in a script that no linguist, cryptographer, or codebreaker has been able to decipher. The text has the statistical properties of natural language, patterns in letter frequency and word length that match those found in real, written languages. This rules out, at least provisionally, the idea that it is simply random marks. Something structured is there, but what it is structured to say has resisted every attempt at translation. The identities of the author, the intended reader, and the purpose of the manuscript are all unknown. Theories range from an encrypted language to an invented script for a fictional or magical purpose, to a hoax constructed to sell for a high price to a wealthy collector, to a genuine but still unidentified natural language. Computational approaches and AI analysis have been applied in recent years, identifying some statistical patterns and potential word meanings, but have not produced a translation that the scholarly community has accepted as definitive. The Voynich Manuscript may be the most mysterious book in the world, not because it is supernatural, but because something was deliberately written by someone who understood it, for reasons that made sense to them, and it has sat unread for 600 years. The Antikythera Mechanism is a different kind of mystery. In 1901, sponge divers off the Greek island of Antikythera discovered a shipwreck containing bronze statues, pottery, and jewelry. Among the debris, largely overlooked at first, was a corroded lump of bronze that turned out to contain an extraordinary secret. When cleaned and studied over subsequent decades, with X-ray and CT scanning eventually revealing its internal structure, the Antikythera Mechanism turned out to be an analog computer of remarkable sophistication, designed to predict astronomical events and track the movements of the sun and moon with an accuracy that required an understanding of planetary mechanics that historians had not thought existed in ancient Greece. The mechanism contains at least 30 bronze gears of varying sizes, meshed in configurations that allow it to model the Metonic cycle, the 19-year pattern through which solar and lunar calendars align, as well as eclipse prediction, the phases of the moon, and the movements of the known planets. It has a front dial showing the position of the sun and moon in the zodiac calendar, and a rear dial showing the Metonic and Saros eclipse cycles. The inscriptions on its housing indicate it was designed to be used and explained, not merely displayed. It was built approximately 2,100 years ago, likely somewhere in the Greek world. Nothing comparable in mechanical complexity is known to have existed until European clockmaking reached a similar level of gearwork sophistication, more than 1,400 years later. The mechanism raises several questions that are still open. How was this level of engineering knowledge achieved? What tradition of mechanical craftsmanship produced it? And where are the other examples, the predecessors and contemporaries, that must have existed if this was the product of a developed tradition? Why does the historical record contain essentially no other trace of this level of mechanical sophistication? Was this knowledge developed, used, and then lost? And if so, what does that imply about how knowledge can disappear from human civilization? The final mystery in this journey is the largest in scale by an almost incomprehensible margin. It is about the fundamental structure of the universe itself. When astronomers in the 1970s began carefully measuring how galaxies rotate, they found something that made no sense. The outer regions of spiral galaxies, the parts furthest from the center where there is less visible matter, were rotating at roughly the same speed as the inner regions. According to the physics of gravity, this should not happen. The solutions that seemed complete in one century have often turned out to be partial in the next. The questions that seemed permanently closed have occasionally been reopened by new discoveries that changed everything. Perhaps the most honest thing to say about the greatest mysteries is not that we will eventually answer all of them, though some we almost certainly will, but that the process of genuinely investigating them, without forcing premature answers onto genuinely open questions, is itself one of the most valuable things human intelligence does. The answer, when it comes, changes the question. And the new question is always larger. Like and subscribe to Freud Mind for more.